think that being happy makes a difference to your business? Not just your happiness, clients' happiness, staff happiness. What would your business be like if you could have more happiness in it? Now, today I have got a treat for you. I have got Matt Phelan, author of Freedom to be Happy, on the show, and we are discussing the business case for happiness and how that relates to the equine industry, as well as talking about his own background, growing up on a farm, and he knows more about cows than he does about horses. But do enjoy this episode and let us know what you think. Stay tuned. Welcome, Matt, to the Equine Business Show, and today we are talking all about happiness, because Matt has brought out this awesome book, Freedom to be Happy. So, Matt, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, Jen, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
My biggest claim to fame is that I went to school with Jenny.
Yay!
To the Harrods School, so that's number one on my CV.
Yep.
And what was the question again?
What do you tell everybody a bit more about, like, who you are and what you do in sort of terms of the happiness index? Like, what is that?
Yeah, so I suppose my background, I think, is slightly relevant to the question, which is, so I grew up on a farm, so being around animals and stuff like that's natural for me. And my sort of background was, my view is that animals are better at communicating than human beings. And what I mean by that is we have sophisticated language, don't we? But I would argue, and my specialism is not horses, my specialism is cows. But let's group them together for now. I would argue that cows and horses are better at communicating than humans, because if a horse is unwell, it makes it pretty clear that it's unwell. If it doesn't want to go out for a run, it lets you know. If it's hungry, it lets you know. Whereas human beings, they can be thinking something for 5 years and never let you know. So I think I've always been fascinated in like human and animal behavior. And then when I got into the normal workplace, that's when I started to realize I think animals are better at communicating than humans, because people say some weird stuff at work, and we'll get into that. Jenny's got some stats, but I was really lucky. When I was in my 20s, I started a digital and data marketing agency, and we built that up into a global business. But we built it on a Richard Branson quote called customers don't come first, employees come first. So you look after your employees, and then they will look after your customers. So I suppose in the same way that if you're in an equine business and you look after your team, I would argue that the horses will be better looked after. And let's get into that in a bit. But we basically built a bit of technology, because when you've got 10, 20 staff, you should know how they feel, because you should be seeing them every day and having a chat. But once you get past like 100 people, which is a number called the Dunbar number. So generally you can stay friends and associate with about 100 people in your life. Right from like your partner, like the core group, through to like your bigger friends that you keep in touch with, which is why people lose touch in life and stuff like that. But businesses struggle beyond that number because they don't understand how their people feel. And all the research and data says that if people are happier at work, they perform better in their life. So it's not just like a philosophy of mine. It did start as a philosophy, but the data and science backs that up. And I would argue that would be the same. Well, no, I know it would be the same. It's the same in every single industry. So I would argue that if you love horses, and I don't understand why you'd work in equine if you don't, but I bet there are, in every industry, there's some people that don't.
But then there are some moments when people said to me, "Oh, you like horses?" And I just had to stand there and go, "I don't know if I do. I don't know if I do anymore."
And that's normal, isn't it? That should be the question you ask yourself about whatever industry you're in. But I would argue that if you care about horses, and you're running an equine business, and you don't look after your staff, then you're either I'll choose my words wisely. You're either ignorance is a strong word, because you might not know about the data. You might think you love horses, but then you're not looking after your people. But once you know that data, I would argue that you're probably incompetent. If you know that looking after your staff means that horses are going to be looked after better, then maybe if you can't look after your team, maybe you shouldn't be looking after horses. But I don't work in the equine industry, so I'm free to say that.
I think
up at a horse event, no one's gonna be like, "You're that bastard."
One of those sort of tricky things, isn't it? Because unlike many industries, with horses, they're 24/7. You know, it's all go go go. They don't take breaks. They don't have Christmas holiday. Trying to just go stop and go is so hard. And like even in sort of the current climate, that's with being all the lockdowns and everything that we've had, being told that suddenly you just can't carry on brings up so much stress and it just makes it so hard, because they still need to be looked after, they still need to be fed. There's this dedication to duty, which again I think as employers and employees that everybody feels. And like so going to sort of the stats on equestrian business, the British Grooms Association did a survey recently. According to their blog, I will post it in the comments and the show notes, but that apparently, according to this survey, 58% still said that surveyed said that they were not paid the national minimum wage. 61% said they didn't get overtime or time off in lieu. 33% said that they worked 6 days a week, and 31% said they worked 7 days a week.
Shocking.
And then 21% said that they didn't receive their holiday entitlement. And I think it's really key, because there's quite a high turnover, especially on smaller yards. There's quite a high turnover because how do you balance between keeping your staff happy and getting the work done, because it's hard work, and trying to run a business because horses are expensive. So and like one of the reasons I think a lot of us start our own businesses in the first place is because we are after that pursuit of happiness. You know, we don't feel fulfilled in the workplace, and we want to be doing what we love, and it's kind of getting that balance. And so I was having a good read of your book. I've had a good read of if you want to grab this is Matt's new book, Freedom to Be Happy, The Business Case for Happiness. And like one of the things you said, like, if you want to start a business, the time is now. There will never be a right time. And so that kind of resonated. But there's so much in here that I think is relevant. Like even if you don't have staff, and sort of you're branching out. But like as you say in the book, we've kind of banned emotions from the workplace. It's not been something that happiness has always been considered a bit of a wishy-washy, intangible thing. So what can we do to make sure that we get happiness into business?
I think that there's so much in those points, Jen. I think the first one is equine is obviously an industry of passion, isn't it? I would imagine most people who get into it do love that area. And I think there's 2 points on that. One, that shouldn't be an excuse to take advantage of people. Just because you've got a young person who likes horses, doesn't mean that you should get away with paying them less. But there's two sides to this well, is also the customer side. And I think that's where equine businesses, like all businesses, need to be transparent about cost. And obviously my side of the sort of, I don't even know what to group the bigger industry as, but animals and farming and equine and everything, is that
the rural industry,
the rural business. I think what rural businesses, like the business I'm involved in and lots of your customers, is that transparency about what actually goes in to, let's take a riding school, right? I don't even know, I actually live near the biggest riding school in the UK in Trent Park. I think they're known as like the biggest. I forgot what the biggest group of horses. What's a group of horses? Is it a herd?
A herd, yeah.
Stable. I think they've got the biggest, whatever it is in the UK.
They're equestrian centre, they're big equestrian. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one I go there and I love it. And I can't remember how much it is per hour for my daughter to go there, but let's just say it's £20 for argument.
Yeah.
How much would it be at the horse ranges? How much would it be there, Jen, for an hour?
Last time I knew it was about £20-25 a week. Yeah.
So not far off. So I think what I find fascinating is to allow that £20 for a young person to go and ride a pony or whatever. I think people need to make it transparent about how much it costs to run a business like that, because what I find fascinating, if you look at my side of things like food production, people will spend £1,000 on an iPhone. Like they may spend that monthly and they may not spend that up front, but then they will argue about whether the price of their Weetabix or the price of their beef or the price of their lamb has gone up by £1, which is an important argument to have, because we're in really tough economic times. But I find it fascinating that people will have no problems paying £1,000 for an iPhone, a new iPhone, when the previous iPhone still works. But then they argue about £1 about something that actually goes into their body. So I think my point is that I think the wider rural community need to get better at doing like what you're doing now, Jen, which is communicating out what goes into a business like that. Because I would, if I was running an equine business, I would, if there was a business that was doing it at very low cost, I would want the customers to think, wow, where are they cutting costs here? Are they really feeding? Are the animals getting fed properly? Are they being looked after? And so on. So it's a complicated piece, but I think it's two ways. I think the employer needs to take responsibility to not take advantage of people, but also the customer, where they spend their money, they need to ask questions. But I think equine businesses need to do what you're doing, like on this show, which is be more transparent, and that feeds into your marketing anyway. And then just on the emotions bit, emotions banded from work, right? So as a non-horse person, but as an animal lover, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's the same with dogs. If you go to Newmarket, I love going up to Newmarket, and you watch a horse rider with their horse, the amount of emotions they show the horse, they're patting them, oh, I love you, you're the best horse I've ever had, blah, 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 blah. They're happy to show their horse emotion. But then they might not. Then the poor kid who's cleaning out the stables, they might not even be asked how they are. So
or they're hurting and just told to just man up and just get on with the job. It needs to be done. And it's.
So I think there's so much in that, and I am a big thing of, especially if we talk about dogs, because I do love dogs, and I find it fascinating that there's people that will have a dog that and not look after it, because I just think but also won't text their friends to see how they are. Like, I think you've got to start with humans first, and then when you've looked after all the humans around you, then you should then look into whether you should be someone that has animals, whether that be a dog, a cat, or whatever, because that's got to be number one, isn't it? If you've got kids, look after your kids first and all that kind of stuff, and then get to the animal, because it's like anyone, isn't it? Like, if you've got 2 children, Jen, you've got to be able to be in a position to look after your children first before the animals. And I think people
and again, even before that, you've got to be able to look after yourself first.
That's a really
and a lot
point.
of people can't even look after themselves, and then it's sort of and a lot of what I have to do is saying to people now, how stop for a minute and stop trying to please everybody else and look after everybody else, get you right, and then come from that place, and then you're able to serve better. And I think, do you think, like, in that sort of sense, that a lot of people don't, because they don't put themselves first, does that then impact, because they're not happy, that then sort of filters down through it?
Yeah, well, I think the research shows that most people think that if you go to school, work hard, go to university, get a job, progress up the ladder, you will become happy. most of the data and research out there shows that if you focus on happiness, then you perform better, you get a better job, you progress in the equine industry. So actually it's the opposite to what most people think. So you've got to look after yourself. You can't mix up selfishness with looking after yourself, because it can't suddenly everyone be about themselves. But just basic stuff, like in my first couple of companies that I've run, I never made time for fitness and going for a run and all this kind of stuff. That since this COVID outbreak, there's not a day that goes by where I don't do some exercise, because I come from rural, but then I moved to the city. One thing you take for granted in rural, if you're working in like equine and stuff, which is if you're mucking out a shed, like that's your gym work done, isn't it? And you might not look at it that way, and you might think, oh God, I've got to muck out the shed. But I found this Christmas was the first Christmas that I didn't like feed the cattle on the farm and stuff, because we were in lockdown in London, so I couldn't come back. But that definitely impacted my own mental health, because I'm just not used to being indoors for a whole day. Whereas, so on our farm, you spend all of the AM making sure all the animals are okay. And then actually, I really missed that, because all of a sudden, it's a nice feeling, isn't it, when you've actually finished the work and done it and all that kind of stuff. So, and also from an equine perspective, I think businesses like equine businesses need to start to get better at showing what they provide beyond the ride or beyond the product that they sell, because there's massive benefits to horse riding and so on that are not counted in society, aren't they? Like shutting down an equine business, shutting down tennis courts, shutting down golf courses doesn't just have a monetary impact. It has an impact on everything, on health and
physical health, mental health. Yeah, it's massive. It's massive, and I think that makes it so hard for everybody, because people still want to have that. I mean, we were so lucky that because I own my own horses now, that through the lockdowns, my children have still had to do their horses every day, because they've got a reasonable excuse to get out of the house. And it was something they can do. And I just think if you haven't got that, it must have been so hard. And I know even then a lot of even like business owners in the equine industry, their horses were on livery yards, and the livery yards locked down, and they weren't even allowed to go and see their horses. And it was just devastating for a lot, because, as I say, they are part of our families. The animals are a massive part because one of the things, like all the little girls that tell all the horses their secrets, they're kind of like your headspace, you know. So I often say to people, I used to go and poo pick every day, because it used to just give me that space away to just think. And otherwise life is just go and that definitely impacts like mental health and sort of well-being. And I think especially for the case of the employers, it's because they've got all the stress of like, how am I going to feed the horses? They then come from that place, and their staff feel that. And like one of the things you say, like when you're working in a place, you want to work with people who are also happy, and it's really hard to keep the mindset right, isn't it? To keep it sort of flowing.
And I think because I've got feet in both camps of like living in a city and a rural background, it's easy to slag off people that don't understand the rural background and say, well, people just don't understand, these people who are in Westminster, all this kind of stuff. You can either moan about it, or you can spend time creating awareness of that impact. Because I bet you there's loads of decision makers in wherever that don't even realise that when you shut this business, you shut a coffee shop down, that's obviously going to impact a small coffee shop, that's going to impact the family and their business, and that's obviously terrible. But you shut down like a horse riding centre, that is a business. How are those horses going to be fed? Because you play it out, you play this further out, there's serious ramifications of that. And I don't think there's so many people, decision makers, that are not aware of that. But again, you can moan about it, or you can make people aware of it. And I just think I just get fed up with people that just moan and don't do anything. I left the WhatsApp group on my road because everyone just moans about everything, but no one does anything about it. So it's like, is it just a moaning place, or are we actually going to do something? Because if you're going to do something about it, because they've brought this thing into London, they're low, I forget what they're called. They're roads where they've put stuff in so that they're low traffic roads, so that you can do more cycling and all that kind of stuff. And there's pros and cons to it, right? But people hate it because they can't get where they want to go as quickly as they used to. But rather than like collecting some data, trying to understand the real impact, people just moan about it. It was like, well, you're not achieving anything by moaning about it. So get together, collect data, and make your business case. If you think that the equine business is underrepresented in its positive impact on things like mental health and happiness and the GDP of the country, collect that data and get it out there, rather than just sitting and moaning, because you're not helping yourself or the future of your industry.
Yeah, no, it's either sit in the dark and keep whinging about being in the dark, or look at the light and go and get it at, and shine it on where you're at. And I think it is so important. But even then, I think there's a lot of things that equestrian businesses can do, even in lockdown. And as you say, it's kind of like telling, like being transparent with people about what the real impact is, but also like getting the mindset right and the money. And like one of the things, like when I was with the horse rangers, we used to make people pay on a subscription every single week, right? Regardless of whether they came to ride. And a lot of the parents used to whinge about that. But I said, no, what we're teaching you is that if you have a horse, instead, it's not about riding. It's not about riding. Like my horses haven't been ridden properly in weeks because we don't have a menage to ride in, and we've only got the fields, and the fields are too wet, and we can hack out. But the schools, of course, the indoor school, I can't hire that out, that's closed. So they've not been ridden. It's not about the riding, it's about having the horse and having that responsibility, and that means you pay for it every single week, whether you ride it or not. You've still got, and it's the same, I guess, with sort of your family and having the cows. Whatever happens, they've still got to be looked after, haven't they? Regardless. So it's kind of educating people into that's why they pay for it, and if they want to make sure that they're looked after and they're at a standard that they would expect.
Totally. If you love horses, then that's, you cutting costs on stuff is only going to be a bad thing for the horses eventually, isn't it? And obviously there's going to be again, I don't know the equine industry, and there's obviously always going to be bad businesses in every industry that are trying to take advantage and just make a quick buck out of it. But I'm pretty sure, like in every industry, most people know who they are, and most people, you learn over time, don't you, anyway? We live in a transparent world where you can leave reviews and all this kind of stuff. So I just think like with the book, just try and collect data and do more research and get behind all these kind of studies that show the greater impact of what the equine business does.
And again, it's not just, and if we can focus on people like our clients, our customers, and our staff, our employees, those people that we support in our businesses, and we come from a place of serving, I think we'll all be happier. Do you agree?
I mean, the data backs it up. I mean, I left out more data in the book than I included because I'm a bit of a geek, but I didn't want to make it too data heavy. There's lots of stories in there from different types of people and stuff like that. I mean, there's an amazing piece on soil research in there. So that I couldn't believe it, because I read the article that soil makes you happier. And it was like an article from like 15 years ago in the blooming Daily Mail, which is a disgusting newspaper. But it just said, the headline said, soil makes you happier. So I contacted the professor in America and said, is this true? What's the research behind it? But effectively, if you take Prozac for depression, the way Prozac works, it triggers off serotonin in your brain. So serotonin is sometimes called the happiness drug, which is that kind of, if your mum kisses you, it releases serotonin in your brain. So it's that like warm, nice feeling that you get from love and all that kind of stuff. But what they found in the research is that in soil is a bacteria that if you breathe it in, has the same impact on your brain as Prozac. So it's a pretty crazy finding, really. And you start to realize like things like unhappiness are linked to the fact that we've lost our way in the rural world and all this kind of stuff.
I'm disconnected from our planet. We were never meant to be disconnected from. We're part of it, aren't we?
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to speak to that professor, because this is for me, this is a massive piece of research, but only the start of it, isn't it? Because people say things like there's initiatives, aren't there, like riding horses is good for mental health and all that kind of stuff. But we're only scratching the surface of it. So if you take soil, like, because I always want to know more and more and more, the first question I was like, so what type of soil? Because if you go like out in like Little Oakley and places like that, the soil's quite clay. It's quite clay soil from farming that area. If you go up into like the north of Suffolk and Norfolk, they've got like that super rich, like that you could grow anything in soil. So I want to know, like, what soil makes you happier? Like, is there a difference? There's certain there's a piece of research that children that grew up in like rural farming communities for the first 2 years of their life build up a mental resilience that stays with them for the rest of their lives. It's called the Farm Study. I'll send you a link, Jen, that hopefully that you can include in it.
Yeah.
But it actually stays with you for your whole life. Like the child, weirdly, it has to be in the first 2 years for it to have a long-lasting impact. But you can get you could take a 6-year-old and move them from a city to a rural location, and it would help. But we're still in the early days of understanding this stuff. So I just recommend everyone to be part of this revolution of trying to get people to understand the wider impact. Like if again, I know the equine business is wider than this, but you do more than sell a ride on a horse or a piece of equipment with this or horse. You're enabling something bigger in someone's life. So try and understand what that is. Like, I am sure most people who are into horsing got into it because that thrill of the first ride and all this kind of stuff. And try and remember all that stuff, and then try and understand that and communicate it out is what I would say from the research in the book.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people, have got to stop focusing on, well, I can't charge that much, nobody's going to pay that, to actually helping people to see the value of what they're getting, and that it's not just it's not just an hour's ride, is it? It's going to help them work better because they're going to feel happier, like as you say, just by having a ride. So it's going to improve their work life. It might improve their family life because they're not going to feel so stressed because they've taken time out. It's going to improve their health, their fitness, their mental. And I think, as an industry, we've got to stop worrying about the price. We've got to be clear that this is what it costs and this is why, but this is what they'll get. I mean, people think nothing about going to Costa and paying £3 or £4 for a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And explain, nobody likes putting their prices up, but ask your customers, tell them what you're thinking of doing. Like, one thing that if your business is shut down right now, whether you're a coffee shop or equestrian centre, you should be collecting your data and understanding who your customers, your members, who they are, spending time finding out who's interested in horses in your local area, so that you've got a better database. So when you can reopen, you're communicating with more people. But ask them, just say, look, if we put it up by £2 an hour so that we could improve the quality of the bedding, again, I'm just making stuff up because I don't know the industry. We're going to put it up. If you told all your customers, we're thinking about putting it up £2 and we could do this, £3 and we could do this, £4 and we could do this. Just ask people. If everyone's like outraged and says, no, we couldn't afford that. But you might find that people say, no, actually, if you put it up by £5, and that we could get more involved and all this kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of trying to get your customers to see themselves, like you said, Jen, of that monthly point of seeing your getting your customers to become members of whatever your thing is. So I would want horse rangers to be seen as like not an exclusive club, but an open club that you're all paying into, and there's opportunities in the year that you can actually put more in if you feel like that. Like if you want to contribute, if you want to, people do a really good way of crowdsourcing stuff, doesn't it? Like if you want to build a new stable, put it out there.
it's about community and getting people to feel that they're part of it, and then they're more than happy to contribute because they understand it. And I think a lot of the time they don't. They just think, oh, I'm just getting an hour's lesson. It's what's in it for me, and or whatever that be, even if it's like feed supplements. So I mean, the industry is massive. Or like a farrier, it's more than just a shoe on a horse. It's
Exactly.
just or a trim on your horse's feet or whatever it is, and it makes a massive difference. But I think happiness does follow through with everything. So thanks so much for coming on today, Matt, to talk
Thanks
to
for
us.
having me, Jenny.
If people want to grab your book, I know I got it on Amazon, so I will make sure I share the link. It's a really good book, and it's a business case for happiness. I think it's really good for anybody that's in HR, anybody that's in, and I know that I've got quite a few horsey HR people that follow me, so I would suggest that they grab a copy and read, because I think it just helps us to make better choices.
Yeah.
And the better choice has got to come not from the money, it's got to come from that attitude of doing the right thing and serving. And so when the people are happy, the horses will be happier. And we're really good at reading the horses and their behaviour and their emotions, but we kind of read what people are saying, but we don't want to we don't want to admit that we know what their body language and everything is saying to us, and when they're not happy. So thanks so much. So where else if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Matt, what would they need to do? Where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter, which is at Matthew Phelan. I use LinkedIn for business networking. But if anyone's got really interested in this stuff, I've created a community called the Happiness and Humans Community, and I don't reckon there's any horsey people on there. So I believe in diversity. So if we could get some horsey people on there talking about this link between happy employees and happy horses. I'm a big believer in putting your vision out there. I always said that I wanted to track the happiness of animals after we did humans, and someone from the Guide Dogs Society got in touch, and I got to go up to the where they train all the guide dogs. Probably one of the best days of my life. I actually took my daughter out of school and took her there. It's an amazing place to go, but just join the community, because I think there's about 500, 600 of us in there, all talking about this stuff, and from different industries. People in India, China, and so on and so on. So I would encourage more people. I think the equine business, if you're not in it, don't know nobody else knows anything about it. So I think the more people know about the equine business and the challenges you've got, the better it is for the equine industry. Yeah. So not even just HR. A lot of HR people are buying the book, but it's anyone. Like, if you're interested in happiness and your own happiness, I think the research in there is relevant to you. But please join the Happiness and Humans Community. There's my podcast where I basically interview all the researchers. So like that guy who's done the farm research and all that kind of stuff, he's on there. You can find that and listen to me doing the job that Jenny's doing now. It's basically, if anyone listening, it's easier to be the guest than it is to be the host, because Jen's making it look really easy, but it's frigging nightmare. Controlling everything. You got to think of the questions and so on. So good work, Jen.
Oh, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it's really, and I think especially with horses, like if you ever do come and do horses, because horses are like mirrors. Seriously, like they will mirror you can see how somebody's feeling through the horse. Even when they're riding it, you can see how somebody's body works, because you can see the horse will mirror what the problem is in the rider. They're amazing animals, and it would be lovely to see some research on that, and they do make a massive difference. And I know there's a lot of people that work in inner cities trying to get horses into like communities that wouldn't normally get that.
Well, everyone in London's getting a bike to go to work. What about it? Would be great if we all had horses, wouldn't it? I'd love to turn up to a meeting on a horse. It'd be amazing.
I've done a lot of things on the back of a horse. I've sung on the back of the horse. I've had all sorts of board meetings, I'm sure. But I think we should all get on horses. And so next time, when you finally do get to come home, Matt, you'll have to come and meet my horses. And,
definitely. I'm up for that. I know my children will be.
Yeah, bring your kids for a ride. I've got 2 very nice ponies that they'd love. So. But thank you so much. And so do check out all of Matt's links. I'll make sure that he sends me all the information that you need. And thanks so much for joining. Please do make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a future episode of the Equine Business Show. And as always, do like, comment and share, or send me a message on Instagram or Facebook at the Equine Business Assistant. I would love to know what your thoughts were. Have a great day, and I'll be back really soon. Take care.